Man, I murdered my children, a couple of my children, a couple months ago. They're in my garage, man.
He was supposed to protect them, a father, a caregiver. But now Wellington Delano Dickens III is charged with killing 4 of his children over several months. The horror inside that home has left a community searching for answers and asking how this could ever happen. We're on the case, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Chris Stewart. This story that began with a terrifying discovery has only become more horrific. A father now facing charges, accused of the unthinkable. You're looking at a moment of pure innocence. 4 kids playing in a bounce house, laughter frozen in time. But just months later, their father called 911 and confessed to something straight out of a nightmare.
It's non-emergent, but just have a confession. Man, I murdered my children. Couple of my children a couple months ago. They're in my garage, man.
That man, 38-year-old Wellington Delano Dickens III, is now charged with 4 counts of murder. And investigators say the killings didn't happen all at once, but over months. When deputies arrived, they found Dickens' 3-year-old son alive inside the home and the bodies of 4 children in the trunk of a car in his garage. In putting this story together, we put Wellington Dickens III's name into truthfinder.com, and that database can give us a lot of information about the people who are involved in our stories. In this case, it shows us the previous run-ins with the law that he's had in North Carolina. Our partner, Truthfinder, is the powerful public records search service that we use to do research here on Law and Crime. You talk about a useful resource, you can plug in a name, you get address information, criminal history, and more, and it can really give you some peace of mind even if you don't work in the true crime space. Truthfinder is one of the largest public records search services in the US, and with a paid subscription, you get access to unlimited reports of almost anyone. That includes looking up registered sex offenders in your area as well. So you might be shocked, even if you look yourself up, what it knows about you. Stay informed, stay safe. Check public records with Truthfinder now at truthfinder.com/OTC. The sheriff says there are no answers, at least none, that can ever make sense of what happened here.
Folks, there's no known motive at this point why Mr. Dickens murdered these children. But as the sheriff, as a father, and as a grandfather, I can stand here and say there's no reason for a father to murder his children.
Authorities say Dickens had been arrested 7 times before, even previously on child abuse charges. But beyond the headlines, the story of Dickens' life and the house where this tragedy unfolded paints a complicated picture. Wellington Delano Dickens III lived in Zebulon, North Carolina, a small rural community outside Raleigh. Neighbors say he mostly kept to himself after the passing of his wife, Stephanie Ray Jones Dickens, earlier this year. From the outside, it looked like a quiet life, a dad raising his kids alone. But investigators now believe that inside that home, something unthinkable was happening. On October 27th, Dickens called 911. In his own words, he confessed to killing his own children, explaining that it had started with over-disciplining, then spiraled out of control.
Johnston County 911, location of emergency.
Yes, I got an emergency, but it's non-emergent, but just have a confession,
Okay.
It's horrible.
Okay, what's your address?
If I could, I got my son here. He's with me. It's no issue. But if you could honestly come with no issues, I don't have no gun. I don't have nothing like that. I don't plan on doing nothing crazy. I just would like to make the scene as less profile as possible. But if you need to do what you got to do, if you want to get crazy, that's fine. But I'm just letting you know what my preference would be. I'm not an issue, but it is a problem, and just having my mind is just thinking I need to do this because it's just the right thing to do. And
okay, I got you. What's your address here? Where are you?
I'm at 101 Springtooth Drive.
Okay. And tell me a little bit what's going on out there?
Man, I murdered my children, a couple of my children, a couple of months ago. They're in my garage, man. I murdered my children, not all of them.
Okay.
I had one that I accidentally killed first by hitting her excessively.
Okay.
And I was nervous about her, and I was trying to manipulate my children and making them make a decision that I was supposed to make.
Okay. All right.
I'm no threat, man. I'll be wherever you need me to be. If you want me to be outside before, I don't got no. I'm planning on just letting myself. I never been. This is totally new for me.
Understood.
And I'm not blaming nobody but myself.
Okay. I just want to verify how many in total were there.
I have my daughter, my youngest daughter.
Okay. Just one? Is that correct?
No.
How many in total?
No. It's 3 of mine and my stepson and everybody. I mean, it was my fault. Everybody, it was my fault for everything.
Okay. So I want you to just hang tight here while I get you some help into the area, okay?
They in the trunk. They in the trunk of my car in the garage, to be specific. And I was just out of my mind. Nobody made me do nothing. It was all me. And I was just up from the first one, and I lost my mind. I wasn't thinking right. I was on the drugs and smoking, drinking.
Yes,
I was doing ice, everything.
Got it. Okay. I want you to hold on one moment because
everything. Mushrooms. I was on a lot of stuff.
Okay. I want you to hold on one moment here since you are in a county jurisdiction.
That was all of it. I did coke.
Got it. We're going to try to get a trooper. Listen to me, okay? 1 second. We're going to try to get a trooper out there, deputy out there to you.
I might have missed something.
I understand. We're going to try to get a deputy out there to you here. I want you to hold on 1 second, okay?
I killed my children. It's a lot to explain, but in a nutshell, it's all my fault. I'm not even going. It's my fault. It's bad. I didn't hurt them on some when I say just kill, I didn't use knives or nothing to cut nobody or shoot nobody or nothing. It started out as me over disciplining. That's it. And leaving them out to eat, leaving stuff out to eat, it's a lot of stuff.
Okay, and sir, how did you do it? Sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, how did you do it?
I beat on them sometimes. They didn't want to eat. I didn't force them to eat. I told them that it was a punishment not to eat. I did a bunch of different little things. I thought I was trying to. It's a lot of things, and I'm trying to just do the right thing because unless something, I tried to call a lawyer earlier, but I could have maybe called a lot more lawyers. I just did one. I should have just started calling all of them, and just trying to basically turn. I was basically trying to turn myself in without it being extra. But like I said, if y'all want to do it extra, that's fine. I didn't know your procedures.
Within minutes, deputies from the Nash County Sheriff's Office arrived at his home. In the garage, they discovered the bodies of 4 children, each wrapped and sealed inside the trunk of a car. A 3-year-old boy, Dickens' youngest, was found alive inside the home. He was taken by DSS for medical evaluation. According to the Johnston County Sheriff's Office, Dickens' victims were 6-year-old Leah Dickens, She was allegedly killed in May. 9-year-old Zoe Dickens was allegedly killed in August. 10-year-old Wellington Dickens IV, killed in late August or perhaps early September. And 18-year-old Sean Brasfield, Dickens' stepson, was killed in September, according to law enforcement. Dickens III was arrested and he has been charged with 4 counts of murder. He made his first court appearance on October 28th and is being held without bond. Law enforcement held a news conference to update the community and to try to make sense of an unimaginable crime.
On Monday night, October the 27th, just at around 10:09, we received a call into communication of an individual that identified himself as Wellington Delano Dickens III, who was living at 101 Springtooth Drive in Zebulon. Mr. Dickens stated he had killed 4 of his children, and pretty much they were in the trunk of his vehicle there in the garage at the home. And that his 3-year-old son was there with Mr. Dickens in the home at that time. Deputies responded, located Dickens and the 3-year-old son at the residence. DSS was called. The 3-year-old son was alive, and DSS took the son for medical evaluation, and I can share with you that he is safe. A preliminary investigation believed to be what was human bodies in the trunk of the vehicle located in the garage, as Dickens had earlier said. The victim appeared to have been deceased and in the trunk of that vehicle for some time. Detectives were called and a search warrant was obtained. Our investigation, folks, determined that 6-year-old Leah Dickens was the first child killed by her own father, and that death was believed to have occurred in May of 2025. Zoe Dickens, the second victim, was 9 years of age, and it is estimated that her death occurred in August of this year also. Wellington Dickens IV was his father's 3rd victim, being killed in late August or early September. The 4th victim was Dickens' stepson, Sean Brasfield, who was killed sometime in September as well. All the children in the home were apparently homeschooled.
District Attorney Jason Waller echoed the gravity of the crime, speaking both as a prosecutor and as a dad.
My heart breaks for these children who have been subject to violence and murder, and for everyone who loves them. Over the past 2 days, I have worked closely with Sheriff Bizzle, Chief Deputy Jeff Caldwell, and Captain Pate, and the men and women of the Johnston County Sheriff's Office, along with Director Chip Hawley and the dedicated agents of the State Bureau of Investigation. Their tireless work in the face of such tragedy reflects the very best of law enforcement and the strength of interagency partnerships. Together, they are conducting a thorough and professional investigation to uncover the truth and to ensure accountability through the justice system. Thank you, Sheriff, for your work. Thank you for putting the children first and our community first. As we continue to move forward, I join our entire community in mourning the loss of 4 innocent lives. The outpouring of love and support for these children has been overwhelming, and I want to assure you that those expressions of care and your calls for justice have been heard. At this stage, the investigation remains active and ongoing. When the investigation is complete, my office will review the evidence and carefully proceed in accordance with the law and the facts. As a career prosecutor who has prosecuted both capital and non-capital murders, I understand the importance of patience and precision in this process. Justice is not achieved through haste, but through diligence, integrity, and unwavering commitment to the truth. The loss we face is unimaginable. The responsibility before us is great. And I can promise you this, I recognize the horror you are all experiencing hearing about this crime. And my office will honor the memory of these children by pursuing justice with strength, compassion, and the respect for the rule of law.
As this case unfolds, there's another detail that has investigators and the community asking more questions about this family. All 4 of Dickens' children were homeschooled, but according to North Carolina records reviewed by ABC 11, Wellington Dickens III did not properly register them as homeschoolers, leaving the state without any official oversight. Authorities say that while Dickens and his late wife had extended family in the area, relatives had not publicly raised concerns about the children's safety. But troubling patterns in Dickens' past also paint a picture of repeated contact with authorities. Records reviewed by Raleigh News and Observer show that Wellington Dickens III had previous run-ins with the law and child welfare agencies. In 2015, he was charged with misdemeanor child abuse in Raleigh, though that case was later dismissed. The following year, after the birth of his daughter Zoe, Wake County child welfare workers were called when hospital staff raised concerns about the baby's health. Dickens and his wife refused routine medical care and repeatedly blocked social workers from seeing the child due to their religious and spiritual beliefs. Dickens was even arrested in 2016 for contempt of court after failing to comply with a court order to allow the child to be examined. And the story of the Dickens family is also marked by loss and tragedy before these murders ever occurred. Stephanie Ray Jones Dickens, Wellington's wife, died suddenly at their home April 21st of last year. She was 37 years old, according to her obituary. She was a God-fearing, strong woman who tried her best at all times to please God alongside her family. Stephanie was 3 months pregnant at the time of her death, which authorities say was caused by complications from a miscarriage. Wellington Dickens found her at home, and the family's grief over the passing left him as the sole caretaker for their 5 children. Joining us now to talk about what is just such a difficult case is Will Corman, criminal defense attorney, but also former prosecutor. It's great to have you on Law&Crime to get some of your perspective on this. Just a horrific story. I have just so many questions about how this could happen over this period of time. As someone who was once a prosecutor, just what stood out to you as you're going through this? And if you were building a case like the prosecutors are in North Carolina, what are some of the things you're looking for?
Well, I mean, obviously this is a tragedy. It almost redefines the word, and there's no two ways around that in any way, shape, or form. But the fact of the matter is this. The prosecutors seem to have, at least as far as I can tell so far, a pretty solid case. The 911 call that Mr. Dickens made is essentially a confession. And it's a confession that undoubtedly the medical examiner is going to be able to corroborate by determining the cause of death. This is a horrible case. And if I were the prosecutor, what I'd really be focusing on is the fact that there is a confession. It doesn't seem as if there's any other suspects. It seems as if the confession is pretty tight. I mean, it was a 911 call as opposed to an interrogation or something along those lines. Obviously, this gentleman is a troubled person, and I think from a defense standpoint, obviously, they're going to focus on an insanity defense, his mental health at the time that these crimes were committed. That's what the defense would be, and I suppose the prosecution is going to have to counter that by showing that this gentleman knew exactly what he was doing at the time he did it.
Because I'm sure, and I mean, you're a defense attorney as well. You hear that 911 call for the public, you're like, okay, he clearly did this. There's no two ways about it. I could see a defense attorney raising questions about his mental state. What are some of, if you put on the defense attorney hat with this, and you're taking on a client who called 911 and admitted to everything, and you also have the bodies of these people, how do you defend that?
Again, I think it has to be mental health defense. I can't really, at least from the evidence or the information that I have right now, other than a mental health defense, there's really nothing else out there. It doesn't sound like there's any other suspects. It doesn't sound as if, obviously, it was an accident. He made a statement where he implicated himself not only in the murder of one of these kids, but it sounds like in all of these kids. And the fact of the matter is that all I can think of right now is to basically talk about that this guy was distraught. My understanding is his wife died during childbirth. I think another relative died shortly before that. He was an Iraq war vet. perhaps focus on some of the things that he may have seen when he was overseas. It's a tragic case, but unfortunately, this gentleman's mental health is really what's going to be the key issue here.
And it's never easy to talk about these stories. We do a lot of child abuse cases here on Law and Crime, and I think they're important to talk about. Child neglect cases are important to talk about so people understand that they happen. In this case, though, one of the victims, his stepson, is 18 years old. So this is, in the eyes of the law, it's an adult who dies in the care of this suspect or is allegedly killed by this suspect. I know in some cases where you have a death in the family, there's tragedy that happens, you might have a younger person who passes away out of neglect. But in this case, how does that, I guess for prosecutors, how would they handle this knowing that one of the victims here was an adult he allegedly killed?
I actually don't think it matters in terms of how the prosecutors face the case. I mean, he's 18. Yes, he's an adult in the eyes of the law. I have kids around that age. I don't know that they're adults with a capital A. I don't think it changes the prosecution's focus at all. It may mean the cause of death may be a little interesting compared to, let's say, the much younger kids. An 18-year-old presumably could put up some sort of struggle or some sort of could fight back in some way. But that's something that I don't think we know yet as to exactly what the cause of death was. That could factor into it. But again, the manner of death, at least as far as the 911 call is concerned, seems to be pretty horrific. I mean, this gentleman talks about, maybe I disciplined them too much, maybe I hit them too much, punishments were meted out, and then, unfortunately, the condition that he left the bodies in, it's awful all around. But as far as getting back to your question, whether or not they would treat the death of an 18-year-old any differently, I don't believe they would.
And with that too, I mean, the over-disciplining part is interesting because that sounds like premeditation in some ways, or does that sound like a premeditation type case? Is that something where it's not, and this was over several months, I guess, what did you make of that part of the 911 call? Because in my mind, I think of over-discipline, it could be an in-the-moment thing that a parent did something, but then it's like, we have so many bodies here over such a long period of time.
Sure. I think you're right. That's obviously what the prosecution's going to focus on. This gentleman knew, at least from the 911 tape, this gentleman knew what he was doing, and he knew that he caused these deaths, and then apparently did it again, and apparently did it again, and apparently did it again. And not to sound glib, but it's hard to then say, okay, as you suggested, I lashed out in anger and this happened and I can't get over the tragedy of it, but then it happens 3 more times. And right. If I were the prosecutor, I'd say that cuts against any real defense regarding, even a mental health scenario.
And in cases like this where you have multiple victims, they're all in the same home though, how is this tried out? Because if he had allegedly killed one person, there would be a trial for that, and the reality would be that he would probably spend the rest of his life in prison. In this case, you have 4 people where even if he was found not guilty for some reason of not killing one of the children, you would still have 3 more bodies that you would have to deal with in court.
I mean, I imagine that the government is going to try this as one case. I don't think it's going to be severed into 4 separate homicide trials, and I think that that's what they would want to do, right? Because they want to sort of present this case as this horrible, atrocious act committed by this man, not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 4 times. And I think that any defense attorney would have a very difficult time getting a judge to what's called sever the cases into individual trials. Again, there may be something different around the 18-year-old, and we don't know that. Again, the cause of death may factor into it. The 18-year-old obviously is far different than a 6 or 7 or 8-year-old. So that could change things a little bit. I don't think it would, but if I was the defense attorney, I may want to try to split off that case from the others. But regardless, I think the government is going to want to try this case as one heinous, atrocious act, probably seek the death penalty if that's something that's available in this jurisdiction, based upon the manner of death and the fact that these bodies were, it seems like stored in a trunk of a car. The after effect, it's not just the manner in which these children were killed, but it's what the defendant then does after the fact, right? I mean, he doesn't call 911 after numbers 1, 2, or 3. He waits this whole period of time. In the meantime, Where were the other kids? Did they know what had happened? I mean, it's gruesome. It's horrific.
And one of the questions too is just like, how could this happen? You know, it's kind of the general question of how this could happen, but for it to be this loss of life over so many months, and apparently he pulled the kids out of school and they were being homeschooled, but not really, because he never registered for the kids to be homeschooled by the state. And I know that that's different from state to state when it comes to homeschooling. But how could the fact that he pulled the kids out of school, does that play a role in how the prosecution lays out the responsibility being on him, and not the fact that maybe he has a mental health issue, maybe his, you know, the death of his wife was incredibly traumatic, but he pulled these kids out when they could be in the care, you know, going to school, being with teachers in public school.
And that's exactly right. You know, the prosecutor is going to say, had he not taken this affirmative step to isolate himself with the kids, while one of these children may still have ended up in this situation, perhaps then, you know, the community would have gotten involved, schools would have gotten involved, one of the kids may have had the ability to reveal something that was going on in the house, and perhaps the further tragedy could have been avoided. But the fact that he took what appears to be this affirmative step to isolate his family in the house cuts against, again, you know, any sort of spur-of-the-moment defense that may have popped up.
When you have a 911 call like this, and it's literally the person, I'll say allegedly, him admitting to everything, saying he did it, pretty much saying like, I don't need a defense, like, this is it, I did it. How important is it to also have that forensic evidence? You know, in a case where I feel like there are some cases where someone is going to say they didn't do it all the way to the end and beyond, and you need to have the forensic evidence to prove that they were there and that they did it. In this case, you have a guy who's pretty much just saying, look, this is the reality, I did all of it. How important in these types of cases is that forensic evidence?
It is important. It is important. And again, I think we're using the term forensic evidence, and that's a really, really broad term.
Sure.
And all sorts of things fit underneath that umbrella. But the fact of the matter is that the government is going to need to tie this gentleman to these victims in some way. And again, the 911 call, it doesn't appear as if it talks about absolute specifics with each of these children, and they are going to need to, you know, do autopsies, do a follow-up, figure out exactly what happened, figure out what the cause of death was. From a government standpoint, the cause of death, again, I think he said that, you know, he didn't use weapons, he didn't use knives or something along those lines. I may have the phraseology a little backwards, but the cause of death is important because if he, for example, and this is awful to say, if he beat these children to death, that is different than an individual who didn't know how to perhaps care for kids due to a mental health issue, didn't feed them, perhaps they had some illnesses, he didn't apply medicine or didn't give them medicine, didn't give them the health care they needed. If he took affirmative steps to actually physically cause their death, that's different than a death caused by outright neglect. They're both horrible, don't get me wrong, but if this gentleman actually, you know, laid hands on these children and that's how he killed them, that may be a different approach in order to deal with the mental health defense or anything else that comes along with it than a guy who basically just gave up on life and starved his children to death or things along those lines.
When it comes to the mental health defense, because, I mean, clearly no one would ever be in the right mind to do something like this, but in the eyes of the law, for that to be effective, to say that he was, you know, not guilty by reason of insanity, what's the bar that the defense team would have to prove?
The defense team would need to show that because of a mental disease or defect, and those are technical terms, this individual didn't know the difference between right and wrong and did not have the ability to understand what he was doing or conform his conduct accordingly. It's a very, very, very high bar. And the length of time that it seems that these crimes were occurring, I think cuts against a mental health defense. But as I said a little while ago, from a defense standpoint, that's all you have, and you have to go forward with it. You know, I would imagine that the state is going to be looking for the ultimate sanction, a death penalty in this matter. And as a defense attorney, the only defense to spare this gentleman's life, again, he's not going to walk free, but the only defense to spare this gentleman's life would be a mental health-based defense.
I was thinking about that because this is not as much a case at this point. It appears to be a whodunit of who did it. And if you're a defense attorney, I don't know how open you are with your client of being like, hey, here's the reality, like not guilty is probably not going to happen here. What is a win for this defense team when you get to that penalty phase? Because clearly he's going to spend the rest, I mean, I think it's fair to say, pending some major news development that we're not seeing, he's going to spend the rest of his life inside of a prison. The question would just be, does he go to death row? When you have 4 bodies, you're going up against so much. When you get to that penalty phase, what are you presenting to the jury? Is it just kind of this sob story about his life and his wife dying and things falling apart that you're just hoping tugs at the strings of people that would not put him on death row?
Yes, I think it's a combination of that and some, forensic psychologists or forensic psychiatrists explaining who this person is from that standpoint, if you will. It's not enough to present, hey, this Gulf War vet, what he saw was terrible, his wife died, other family members died. That's the sob story, if you will, which can have some effect on a jury. But I think that, especially in 2025 and beyond, jurors are sophisticated. They watch shows like yours and podcasts like yours, and they know things that are out there. And I think there would also need to be a scientific component. It's not just that this gentleman's wife died during childbirth. This is, from a psychiatric standpoint, what that did to him. And therefore, while we're not asking you to forgive him entirely because these crimes are unforgivable, we are asking you to spare his life.
And we'll see what happens. I mean, again, this case, the 911 call, I mean, it's chilling is an overused term in the true crime world, but this one is definitely, it is a chilling case. We'll see how it plays out. Will Corman, criminal defense attorney, former prosecutor. It's always great to have you on Law and Crime. Thanks for talking about this tough case with us.
Thanks for having me.
That will do it for On the Case, presented by Law and Crime. Subscribe to us on YouTube and Spotify. I'm Chris Stewart. We'll see you next time.